Do you remember here in Colombia where Meghan Markle, well, famously now said as she, strided on that stage and moved that fan and all that sort of stuff, creating once again attention on herself. Everybody said, of course, there's Meghan showing the world how only women can do things. Moving a fan can be very strenuous, I'm sure we'll all agree. But of course, that got her talked about. And then, of course, in one of those rare moments of clarity where she decided to talk about something else other than herself, she decided to basically let the world know that her daughter, 3, Lilibet, whatever you want to call her, well, apparently has found her voice. Oh yes, she proclaimed, she's very much found her voice. So it appears. Now, as we've also seen recently, and I just find this not incredible because, as I told you, chums, the bottom line is that she has been planning this for some time. You see, Meghan has to use the children. It's as simple as that, That is the interest factor now that's left. Really, when you think you've attempted to besmirch the royal family, you've said you're not dealing with any media, you're only doing the interviews that you want to do. Well, you can be quite pious and big-headed at the start when things are going well. When they're not, then you have to pull the reins in and decide exactly what have you got left. Now you've got Prince Harry, but as we all know, he has his own problems, seeking therapy simply for just talking to people about their own trauma. It's not going well, really, is it, when you think about it? And as Meghan famously told another source, apparently His Majesty the King should be sort of grateful for the fact that she's done so much to guide his youngest son, given all the problems that he got. Now, of course, Meghan would have known this, wouldn't she, if she'd have sort of dug a little bit deeper at the original engagement period, got to know this guy a little bit better. But as we know, Prince William decided, well, maybe you should slow down. Meghan put the accelerator on the foot, right? And that's where we are. But now, according to that source, apparently when we now see Lilibet appearing in the Instagram videos, that we saw recently, the one where they were making some sort of strawberry things on bagels, was it? Do you think it was bagels? I'm not quite sure. I think the other bit looked quite nice, the fondue bit or whatever you call it, is it cream? I don't know. Whatever, it looked quite tasty to me. That was the only bit I quite liked. But then, of course, we saw Archie and Lily appearing in the videos. And I told you that the former well known as Prince Harry was not too keen on this because consequently he's been the sort of vocal point of pushing forward and saying, no, he's not going to do that. And of course, social media is a terrible thing. But when you have to earn bucks and you want to be famous, this is exactly what Meghan now has to do. Now, here's where it gets even more interesting because she told a source, and as ever, I have to say allegedly, but an excellent source, that in fact, she now believes that Lily will follow her into the world of show business. You see, apparently she absolutely adores being on camera. Wonder where she got that from. And the thing is, she just likes anything where to do with filming. So much so that when Meghan apparently started to film those little pieces, including the one to Billie Eilish, well, apparently Lily wanted to be in that too. It's amazing, isn't it? But as I said, you see, as she said in Colombia, she'd found her voice. Do you understand? So once you found your voice, you're going to be big, aren't you? Talking of Invictus, by the way, let me just point this out as well. The 12 outfits and the thousands of dollars of, designer gear that Meghan rocked up in. Well, apparently, according to her, she did her bit. She is a global ambassador for the brand and, she delivered the publicity. People want to see her looking glamorous. According to her, she sees this, her role, particularly in the Invictus, as bringing glamour, to the event. A little bit like, see, she pointed out all those super soaps of the 1980s, the Dallases and the Dynasties, where women dressed up and looked terrific, and then people wanted to know where the clothes were from. Yes, all very nice in fact, but if those clothes were either gifted or indeed you were going to auction them off for charity and maybe donate to the Invictus funds. That's where it gets more interesting. But back to Lily, yes, apparently she is going to be something of a superstar herself, but that's not the only one because apparently Prince Archie too has now got a fervent interest in the world of photography. Now she tipped on this, remember when she was doing the chat with Miss and Harriman a while back, saying that he wanted a camera just like Misson's. Do you remember that? And apparently, he had to have it, but she said, no, it's way too expensive. Well, apparently he's pushing forward and wants to do this. It's fascinating, isn't it? We find that Prince Louis took that lovely, I thought, a very sort of atmospherical picture of Catherine, the Princess of Wales, and then suddenly now Prince Archie, and remember, you're going to hear more of this. You hear it always here first. You hear more of this because apparently he is a budding photographer. Maybe he could be the one that gets behind the lens. That must frighten Prince Harry. Can you imagine being in the lounge and suddenly Archie pops out and clicks away? Remember, it triggered him. He said that, didn't he, on the Me You Can't See. What a child he's bred, you know. But on a serious note, all of this is now going to be emerging more and more as we head towards the March the 4th launch of As Ever, Forever, Whatever, and from Meghan, simply because she now needs to utilise the only thing that she's not capitalised on so far, and that seemingly is her children. But for now, it's going to be interesting to see exactly how many more appearances she can squeeze in from her daughter, Lilibet. But as she said, she's found her voice, so expect more. You know, the story goes that Meghan Markle, yes, the former royal at least for 10 minutes inside the British monarchy, well, she was flirting with none other than His Royal Highness the Prince of Wales, Prince William. Yes, yeah, flirting, absolutely. And of course, there's always brand new revelations when any royal author has a book out, and these are the latest, of course, and this is all from a book apparently from a servant's perspective. But as ever, I like to share with you the inner secrets of what are not revealed, and more importantly, what I know as fact. Now, yes, as they often say, buckle up while we share this. Now, as we all know, Prince William, debonair man, even so, the President of the United States said he's far better looking in the flesh than he is when you see him on pictures. And I have to concur on that, chums, you know. He's very tall and imposing, but makes you feel very special. When he's talking to you, you do feel like he's literally interested in you. And I don't mean that rudely, but, you know, he has got time for you. And I think this is the bigger thing of what really, I would say, that the late Princess Diana had, you know. She had that ability to make you feel very connected very quickly. As you can see, Meghan Markle's tried this tactic, you know, on many different occasions, looking at you longingly, looking at your forehead with all of those false eyelashes sweeping upwards, making sure that you stare down into those brown eyes and become captivated. Meghan, you see, used to have a phrase called heart attack beauty, you know, the sort of thing that when she walked in a room after getting dolled up, made up by her makeup artist and stylist at the time, Jessica Mulrooney, that people were so stunned by her beauty, it would result in a heart attack. I know, strange thing to say, isn't it? But of course, Meghan was used to getting her own way. Daddy had literally told her that she was the best thing since sliced bread, something I'm sure he now regrets at great level. But the problem is when you sort of, you know, smother children and give them everything they want, then they think it's, you know, by default they're going to keep it and have it and all that sort of stuff. So when Meghan Markle joined the British monarchy, she saw herself as the true star. Yes, she realised that Catherine, the Princess of Wales, was popular, but according to a source, was no match for Meghan. You know, she knew how to play the cameras, and work the crowd. But what she didn't realise was that actually Brits are not that fickle. We can see through people, and as we saw with Meghan, she was always looking for the camera rather than the crowd. You know, it was, have you got this shot? Are you looking at me? Have you got that? It worked in the beginning because it was a breath of fresh air. People did like her. You know, there was a definite feeling of, yes, you know, this is something different. And it could have worked really in her favour. As I've often said before here on the show, I can't get over just how dense the woman is, because she had everything on her plate that you could have possibly dreamed of. And then you just let it slip through your fingers because you believe that you know how to manipulate, operate, and no doubt in the end, take around exactly what you thought was going to be yours. And that, some might say, included, of course, Prince William. Now, I'm not suggesting for one moment that she was alluding to the fact that she could have become something a little bit more. But what she wanted was to make sure that William was on side. Now, just get this into perspective, right? She knew that William had actually said to Harry that he should take his time and, you know, take the foot off the gas and all that sort of stuff. And she was also very aware about the background story about both Catherine and William being Super Suits fans and all that sort of stuff. She wasn't buying it, but it worked very well. I mean, you know, it would only take 5 minutes to realise that actually he may know who you are, all thanks to a DVD being supplied. But really, no, Harry was just bigging up his wife in his book. We know this is not true because it's full of other lies as well, but that's Harry for you, always trying to do the best for the person that he thinks he needs to please. You get the picture. So what truly happened was all of this flirting and that sort of stuff. Well, really, Meghan just wanted to win him over, to make sure that he literally fell under her spell. her charm. And whatever she wanted, whether that be a bigger house or to move into, Windsor Castle, bigger spacious rooms, better artwork at Kensington Palace, well, all it would take would be a click of those heels, and of course she could get what she wanted. When that didn't work, she then revved it up a little bit more. And how she did that was suddenly develop an interest in flying. Absolutely. And she tried to get William to chat on various occasions about him being an Apache helicopter pilot, something, of course, he's very proud of, and rightly so. Then she dropped the bombshell, as ever. This is, according to a very well-placed source, and allegedly, that she wouldn't mind learning how to fly a helicopter. Always been a dream. You know, she loved Top Gun with Tom Cruise. Yes, all of that. And she piled it on very thick, let me tell you. Now, here's where it gets even more interesting, because William suggested that perhaps her husband-to-be at this point would make the ideal person to show her. No, she didn't want to do that. She wanted to be able to just surprise him, say she'd learned it behind his back, that sort of stuff. And could William, did he have the time? Could he even just go through the rudiments of it with her? You see where this is going. But consequently, William, and dare I say, a very wily Catherine, were already on to Meghan Markle. So while she may think that she could have battered her eyelashes and won him over and literally got her own way, well, the game was already up. Sadly though, for Harry, it's taken him some time to work the rest of it out. But either way, both Meghan and William were never destined to fly high. Meghan Markle's obsession with Princess Diana is very well documented. You know, whatever she claims that she didn't know much about the British monarchy and she had to look him up. I mean, you know, Harry might have fallen for that stuff. But of course, everybody knew watching that particular video that day that Meghan Markle was a con artist. There's no two ways about it. Friends with Princess Eugenie, you know, as I've told you before, why wouldn't you look into her? Where's your friend come from? Who's your father? Claiming not to know, of course, that the Duke of York, Prince Andrew, was nothing more than just a bag carrier standing next to Her Majesty the Queen. I mean, you have to admire the stupidity of the fact that she thinks that you believe it, you know. And then, of course, we've had friends from her past coming out basically saying, oh, she studied Diana, she read all the books, she loved the documentaries, she was obsessed with her. I think the cruelest thing that I've seen, and, you know, this is unverified, I have to say, is the fact that on the first date or a few dates in, she decided to wear the perfume that the late Princess Diana wore. Now, I really don't agree with this because, you know, that is very much playing on emotions, isn't it? You know, smells, it doesn't matter whether it's something that they may have cooked or indeed their perfume or something like that, it can take you right back there into that particular place. And that is truly playing with somebody's psychology. I think what's interesting there as well is, you know, when you think about it, we know just how unstable Prince Harry truly is and still remains. Talks about therapy like you and I talk about going to the shops, you know. But you see, Meghan wanted to go a stage further whilst her short time in the British monarchy. She had a brilliant idea, or so she thought. Remember this sort of Fab Four thing where they're all sat on that plinth talking, and you could see that Catherine wanted to be anywhere but there, but was doing her stint mainly to back up Prince Harry. It was all about mental health, but really in the stages of pregnancy you could see that the poor lady was tired. She just thought, oh, you know, but she was going through the motions to support her husband and everything that was attached to it. But according to the source, you see, Meghan thought that she had a brilliant idea to counteract all the negative PR that was now being thrown against her, mainly, which was still kind of positive at this point, but she wanted to accelerate it, basically to work out who was the most popular of the two. Meghan is nothing but a very shrewd operator, and the idea was to replicate something that had been inspired by somebody that she truly admired, as I say, the late Princess Diana. You see, cast your mind back to, well, quite a few years back now. In fact, when Princess Diana and, of course, Sarah Ferguson, the Duchess of York, went out, literally dressed up and, of course, played around with policemen, went to the Royal Vauxhall Tavern and, you know, many other things. George Michael, you know, he told me a lot of stories about Diana that I'm not allowed to repeat on air, but fun stories about what she did. But, you know, the way the media were portraying Diana and Fergie then was new girls in the royal family, the very best of friends. And they did get on to a point, there was a point. They were never going to be the best of chums because they were, again, from different levels of, aristocracy. There's two ways about it, they were all linked to the royals in one way or another, but the different level of aristocracy. It's as simple as that. But Meghan figured that she had the perfect idea. You see, she figured that the idea really should be that, well, she and Kate, as she referred to her, should actually go out maybe to a movie, like that sort of off duty, be caught going to a movie. And Meghan had the perfect movie, a sing-along thing of Grease, which was already showing in a thing where you go to see it in a park, the ones I mean, a little bit like the Undiscovered London, that type of stuff. And she figured, of course, that if somebody spotted them, then they would realise that they were getting on very well. Now, as we know, Catherine loves pop culture. She loves ABBA. I mean, I can tell you that 100%. Loves ABBA, but just loves pop music, as all, women do. And guys, we all like to be escapism, stuff like that. The one thing that I was told about Meghan was nobody could really work out exactly what she liked in the popular culture world. She never spoke about theatre, serious or indeed fluffy stuff like musicals or anything like that. There always had to be a centerpiece to what she was doing. There was a drive, as it were. And the idea was put to Catherine, and she sort of was like, what? And she didn't think this would be a good idea. But if Meghan wanted to see a movie, maybe they could hire one in or something like that. There was no need to make such a play of it. But there was an intricate background to this story. Because, of course, Meghan, knowing exactly how the tabloids worked and not realising that Catherine's is equally as astute, would have tipped them off. You remember that thing where Harry and Meghan miraculously got pictured going to see a theatre show on Shaftesbury Avenue? Remember that? Well, Harry apparently could not believe how anybody knew they were going. He'd told nobody, Meghan had told nobody, but suddenly out of nowhere, a photographer managed to snatch them, and that picture got out. I wonder who could have told them. Harry. And this is where it gets really interesting, you see, because clearly, time and time again, during her short time in the British monarchy, Meghan Markle had tried many different things to cement herself inside the inner circle. And what she decided was she really needed to connect with Catherine at that point to prove to the world the oncoming problems that were, even she could already see, that they simply were the best of friends, they got on, and more importantly, what was the media simply talking about? Either way, Catherine was far more astute and very politely declined. When Meghan Markle got this was her dream, absolutely. It's the sort of thing when you're a struggling actress that you really crave for. And it's very difficult to get, simply because when you are struggling, you can't get to see people. Nobody wants to see you unless you're a success. But suddenly, if you buy your way into that success, maybe you win the lottery or you marry a prince of the realm, well, suddenly doors truly do open. And this was the case for Meghan Markle and the esteemed agency that is William Morris Endeavour. Throughout the decades in Hollywood, William Morris meant success. Marilyn Monroe was a former client way back in the day, and so many of the big names who they guided to, well, international success and iconic status. They own so many different brands, and some might say they're still the biggest agency today with all the biggest stars. For me, that's a bit debatable because you look and think, are these box office fodders really? Do they actually drag people in? But it's all about the generational thing, isn't it? But for Meghan, she was absolutely thrilled. 100%. Suddenly she could say she was signed with the biggest agency in the world. But what was interesting was Meghan didn't think, yes, get this, that actually it was anything to do with her connections. No, the fact that she'd married into the British royal family was irrelevant, really. They were coming to her because they realised what a powerhouse she was and how remiss they had been in not signing her up all those years ago when she was battering on the door. But you can see that the vultures are circulating, and it's very easy to spot this, particularly with a celebrity on the decline. You see, what normally happens is, and you must have noticed this, chums, is say when an artist suddenly leaves their record label because they want artistic control. It's all very nice and moving, isn't it, and that sort of stuff. But really, the bottom line is that the label have decided there's no more money to be squeezed out of you, so we'll do a greatest hits and then bye-bye, and we may come back for occasional things, but most of the time, you're done. Right? That's the deal. Now, another label, a lesser label, may come and sign you up and hopefully get some of the crumbs left from your association with a major. That's how this works. So this headline, you see, is fascinating because when you see this, you realise that this is exactly what this particular agent is doing over here in the United Kingdom. Now, this particular agent has had varied success with various amounts of different people, but it's tough times now in the world of agency, as indeed it is with William Morris, with the alleged celebrity taking more control than ever through the likes of social media, Instagram. Most celebrities, I have to say, bypass the agent and now just simply employ a lawyer, solicitor to do the deals for them to make sure that they're reputable. That's what saves them money. You see, you can catch hold of a celebrity wherever you want. You could, in a sense, get hold of Beyonce, although obviously she doesn't monitor her own social media, but if it was the right message, suddenly one of her helpers would. And this is exactly where Meghan Markle is now facing. But over here in the United Kingdom, this particular headline is all to reach out and let Meghan know that she's working incredibly hard behind the scenes. And, you know, if they're not doing a good job for you, well, there's somebody over here that simply could. Now, you know, you may think, oh, I know how this game works. You see, for this headline, and this is one that's gone around the world, is basically how hard she's putting all of this stuff together, how difficult it must be for her, and what are the agency doing? And many people might suggest that. Well, so far you could spin it back and say, what has this particular individual done for the agency? Have they made them any money? Have they bought a big brand towards them? You know, are there ambassadorial roles? That sort of stuff. Not really. What you've actually seen so far is a better association for them to revitalise the brand. And this is truly what's happened to Meghan Markle throughout her career so far, particularly since joining the British monarchy. You see, what happened is people book her by association. You know, Netflix bought it because of that connection to the royal family. And they got their money back in spades when they dished the dirt, literally, on the docuseries. But Netflix weren't particularly happy in the beginning because they gave all the juicy gems, including the reveal of their second child, Lily, to Oprah Winfrey. So you can understand how they felt a little bit cheated. So for now, as the, shall we say, anniversary comes up for the year-long signing now of Meghan Markle to William Morris Endeavour, this is the period when they look to see if there's any further value in them. And what happens next is this. You can either have a full year's extension, a 3-month or a 6-month. Now, as we are waiting to see exactly how well this American Riviera rebrand, reboot takes off, well, that's the bigger picture for Meghan. Now, the worst thing that could happen would be is if William Morris announced that they're no longer representing her. That would be the final nail in the coffin. But trust me, Meghan will just pop back out saying she's now free and able to navigate the own sort of lane of her career. All celebrities do this, and that's, as I often say here on the show, exactly what Meghan Markle is now. For now, 100% it appears that William Morris Endeavour are behind her, but that all depends on if this becomes a success. You know, I thought it was quite delightful recently when the Prince and Princess of Wales were chatting to someone about how difficult it is now. Well, when you've got 3 young children, and in particular, we live in a digital age, you know what I'm saying? It's very hard. I don't know if you've got children or grandchildren, but the kids know the phones backwards, don't they? They know more than you. They know how to turn them on, what apps to get, you know, everything seems a lot easier. And when you think about it, people, kind of think, well, how did we manage before phones? Well, we had these, didn't we? Phone boxes, and that's what we did, or people waited to get in contact with you. The royal family are no different because according to William and Catherine, they have very strict times about what they can do with television and indeed games on the iPad. Good to know, right? Parenting skills, always a nice thing to share. But what's interesting is a lot of people ask me, Neil, with the royal family, how true is it that they don't actually carry mobiles and stuff like that? Well, what I can tell you is what I know, of course. And when you look at His Majesty the King, he can't work a mobile, right? A bit like me, in fact. But seriously, he can't work, he's not interested. And that's why the assistants, the aides, all carry it round. But there's a bigger picture behind that story. You see, the Princess Royal, Princess Anne, is is another one who doesn't really like people taking pictures when she's at events. I mean, she won't do a selfie, and rightly so. You know, she's there for the event. But she doesn't understand why people are filming the event rather than living in the moment. But of course, it's not every day you get to meet the Princess Royal, Princess Anne, is it? Or indeed on a walkabout with King Charles, you know what I mean? It gets fascinating. But the reason apparently why they don't have a phone is simply they don't want to be distracted, because, as the Princess Royal pointed out to someone, and we saw this very spectacularly, do you remember, when our late brilliant monarch, Queen Elizabeth II, was doing one of her very sort of final engagements, and first of all, she did a bit of a ruck with the Princess Royal, Princess Anne, climbing out the car, because she didn't really want to be given the stick, remember that, and then she climbed out, and suddenly they went into this hospital just to meet some of the patients, and the moment the Queen got to this patient, her phone went off. And she said, oh, it's dreadful, isn't it, when that happens? And the woman didn't know what to do. Does she speak to the Queen? Does she answer the phone? Very funny, in fact. And I thought the Queen dealt with it brilliantly. But what was interesting is, apparently they don't want this to happen to them. So, you know, it could be an emergency. So what you see with the people around them, at the side of them, all that sort of stuff, is they deal with all of that sort of stuff. If there is an emergency or something that they should know about, very discreetly the call is taken and then word's given to them, or it's waited till after the visit. So while many people might say, why don't the royals get with the modern age? And we've seen it. You can see, for instance, in the pocket, Prince William's iPhone, stuff like that, but it's always turned off. But there's also a bigger security scare. You see, as, say, His Majesty the King might sit down and have tea with a group of veterans or something like that, he takes his coat off. What if that phone suddenly disappeared out of his pocket? Nobody noticed, for instance, it's hung up. You might think it's a secure area. I'm not suggesting it's not, but do you know what I mean? Suddenly, all that information, whatever numbers there are, whatever information stored in the phone, yes, it could be cancelled within an instant, but it's gone missing. And it's just another security scare that they wouldn't need. So for all those that do ask me, do the royals use mobiles? Of course, in the privacy of their own time, but you never see them out and about with them in public. They think it's the height of bad manners. They should focus on you, the people at their meeting. And more importantly, they don't want to be disturbed either. But as we saw, the late Queen, Queen Elizabeth, finally, all thanks to the brilliant tutelage of her daughter, Princess Anne, managed to get to grips with the world of Zoom. And I, for one, was very impressed. You know, we're often told with Meghan and Harry all about their, well, trauma, their secrets, their dramas, literally everything from them, well, particularly Prince Harry. Have you ever noticed that, in fact, it's never Meghan Markle that really complains too much, not particularly in print or indeed on camera? The last time that she was notably complaining would have been, of course, when she spoke to CBS Sunday Morning and said, you know, she'd hardly scratched the surface of the traumatic time that she'd gone through within the British monarchy. Of course, that was just washed over because we're all supposed to believe how difficult it must be having people looking after you, organising trips, you know, every single thing that you could possibly require to make your stay very comfortable. Meghan, of course, was used to better things. Well, absolutely. You know, this is the thing, isn't it? But of course, on recent events, what you find with Meghan is she now likes to surprise you a little bit, like Marcel Marceau popping up out of nowhere. And seemingly, of course, we all should be grateful for her arrival. We saw that recently over in Canada for the Invictus Games. You see, what was fascinating about that, particularly for me, was simply this. From a very off, if you remember, she turned up and basically claimed that she wasn't planning to speak. Of course, the trouble with that is that truly nobody really believed her. I mean, of course, Meghan and a microphone being parted for less than 10 minutes. Oh, I don't believe it. And then she proceeded to waffle on for a long time, even reiterating the same old line that she'd said about Nigeria and, of course, Colombia, that it felt like home and she was seeing people and she was seeing those people looking at them, looking at her, thinking this was home. She kissed the soil, all that sort of stuff. Now, you would have thought she might have had a little bit more time for Canada, given that her greatest and some say only success was appearing in the soap opera type show Suits, filmed over there in Toronto, and merely, I thought, showcased that particular place brilliantly, you know. You would never have known, would you, where it was filmed unless they told you. But I think it just looked terrific, you know, the excitement, the thrill, all of that sort of stuff. I think that's truly what made the show a success. I enjoyed that element at least. Now, here's where it gets interesting again, you see, because as we now know, with Meghan and Harry, as I've said, the truth is always very, very difficult. You know, suddenly she got secretly married. Then, as I told you, the Archbishop had to come out. Then it will know, you know, she'd been misquoted. But you don't go on a big show like Oprah Winfrey and get misquoted. This behind the scenes at Harpo Productions really did cause a lot of problems because they thought, you know, you people forget this, but they thought they'd got bombshells, literally bombshells, and they allowed that out based on what she'd said. Never once did she contradict them and say, oh no, it was just a private, you know, few words, it wasn't actually the official wedding. She knew what she was doing and yet was ready to jeopardize the much sought after friendship with Oprah Winfrey. She desperately wanted it, yet absolutely set a time bomb inside of it. That made sure those two cooled for a while at least. Now again, here's where it gets more interesting, because on the recent visit to Canada for the Invictus Games, she breathlessly turned up and of course made sure that she got all of the headlines talking about, well, naturally the one thing, herself. Never once in the speech did she, if you remember, reach out and say about the veterans and, you know, it was wonderful for them and all that sort of stuff. No. Too busy focusing on the fact that her children asked her husband, never Prince Harry or the Duke, her husband, basically, you know, why are you taking phone calls? You know, it's breakfast, etc. Oh, it's Invictus, right? You know, once again, trying to reconnect on the mommy dearest level. But according to the source, well, apparently this came as something as a shock when Meghan suddenly disappeared. There was no great fanfare, there was no announcement, there was no, sorry, I can't stay with you anymore, going around to meet any people that might have wanted to meet them, you know, veterans, that sort of stuff. You see, many apparently had hoped that they could have received some kind of picture or indeed a meeting on camera, and you can understand that this is their big thing. This is, of course, these are the two people that are supposed to be cheerleading, flag waving, making sure that this is known around the world. And suddenly, many read it in the media that Meghan had now departed, seemingly to go back, of course, to deal with her children. Imagine how you must have felt, particularly if you were investors and all the CEOs and bosses and stuff like that, to suddenly find that the person that you've put a lot of investment in, because the deal was, of course, originally that she was going to turn up. Then there was the usual, will she, won't she, could she not, because is she making a lemon drizzle cake, all that paraphernalia and nonsense. And then suddenly she does turn up, but without any recourse, doesn't tell the people, whether that be from the stage or indeed a media chat or anything like that. Never once did she reveal that, as ever, we have to say, allegedly. Now, when you think about it, if you want this to be your legacy, and this is the thing that's going to be the heritage for your two children, Harry's two children at least, the bottom line is, well, how on earth do you think they're going to feel about that in years to come, finding out that basically their mother shot off, seemingly to look after two children, but only to find then she's making Valentine's bagels with a plug for her forthcoming show. None of it really played out very well. And as you can imagine, if you're part of the Invictus team, you must have thought at the end of the day, was it truly all worth it?